Hi everyone, it's Sean. What up? Welcome back to another video, and today we're doing a breakdown of episode 5 of the third season of the Wheel of Time, Tel'aran'rhiod. So if you love the Wheel of Time as much as I do, or if you just want to keep up on all of the Wheel of Time news, and trust me, there's going to be a lot of it in the next few months, consider making us your home for Wheel of Time news, subscribe to the channel, like the video, and of course tell all of your friends. Now, today we're doing a breakdown. Just a little reminder what my breakdown videos are like. We basically walk through the episode start to finish and we talk about the plot lines, where they're the same as the books, where they converge a little bit, where they're completely different, where they may have taken inspiration from in the book series. So if you're looking for Easter eggs, that's my Easter egg video. If you're looking for reviews, that's my review video. If you're looking for previews and whatnot, look at my Season 3 news playlist. This will be something that's really great for non-book readers who don't mind spoilers. So we are doing full book spoilers for this, all the way up to book 14. If you have not read the entire Wheel of Time series, that's the Eye of the World Through a Memory of Light. Be forewarned, I'm going to ruin plot points and character arcs from that medium. And I guess it just goes to say that if you haven't watched the show, I'm going to ruin stuff from the show too. But essentially, we're doing this for folks who don't mind spoilers, that either haven't read the books in a very long time and want a little bit of a refresher, or have never read the books at all, and you're curious about where certain things are coming from. So again, the video is chock full of spoilers. If you don't mind that, this is the video for you. So let's dive in and start talking about the story in the 5th episode. Now, the episode opens with something that isn't in the book series, but we're going to try to explain it a little bit in the context of the books and where things come from. So Maureen's playing with that crystal ball. The thing she found in Rodian last episode. She found it inside the trunk of Avendesora, the Tree of Life. Now, this in the show is called Sarkinen, and it is a sangreal that women can use, and is likely the most powerful sangreal a woman can use in the show. It does exist in the book series, but in a different fashion. So essentially, we know in the show there are two sangreal. There is this one here, Sarkinen for a woman, and there's Kalendor for a man. Now, Kalendor is, we don't know much about it in the context of the show. We just know that it's in the Stone of Tyr. It does herald the coming of the Dragon Reborn, much like the book series does. But that's pretty much it. We know it's a sangreal because Rafe Tuckins has said so in interviews, and that's how it'll be viewed in the show, but we don't know any other specifics about it. So now we're going to jump into the books. In the books, there were two really, really powerful sangreals, the most powerful sangreals that a person could use, and they were called the Chosen Call. There was one for men and one for women. Now, to put this into context, a sangreal just enhances your ability to draw in the one power. So think of yourself drawing the one power in as a channeler, and you have a straw, and you're drinking a little bit at a time here and there, and that's your natural ability. That's all you can do. Replace that straw with a fire hose. That's sangreal. That's how much more power you can draw in. There are checks and balances and buffers in place. You don't burn yourself out or kill yourself using it, but they're incredibly useful and very rare. Now, like I said, in the book series, the two most powerful ones are the Chosen Call, so I think they're using Sarkinen and Kalendor in the show as those. And it makes sense because you're just winnowing down the numbers of things that show watchers have to remember. Because you gotta understand, this is not going to be a 15-book series, all 14 books and a prequel, plus a bunch of short stories and companions. It's going to be a show that has limited seasons. We don't know how many yet, but we do know that 8 episodes, about an hour each, is not near enough time per season, and we're not going to get many more of them, I don't think, folks. So they're really trying to amalgamate as much as they can. Now, in the book series below the Chosen Call, there is Kalendor, which we've already talked about. It will be in the show, which does, we think, the same things in the books and the show, but we're not entirely sure yet. It's a sangreal for men. It's in the Stone of Tyr. Rand has to draw it as part of heralding his coming out as the dragon, so to speak. There's a bunch of little things. There's not one thing that calls him the dragon. There's a bunch of little things he has to embody for the prophecies. And it's sangreal that's super powerful, has no buffer whatsoever, also kind of amplifies the taint a little bit, and has a bunch of problems with it. But it also exists as a sangreal for the true power. Now, we've seen the true power in the show. The true power is essentially the Dark One's essence. We've seen Lanfear resurrect herself with it back in Season 2. We've seen other instances of people we think using it. But in the book series, essentially, it's only given to the Dark One's most powerful servants at his whim. And it is a power that both men and women can use at the same time, which we kind of saw the beginning of the War of Power in the last episode, where Mirian, who was Lanfear, or is Lanfear now, drilled into his prison to get a hold of this power because it was something that everyone could use. So that's sort of the same. Now, Sarkinen, the one that they're talking about here, also exists in the book series, but it's a sangreal for men, and it comes in a couple of different parts. It's put together in sort of a little epic side quest by Demander, one of the Forsakens, that happens off-page. And this is detailed in River of Souls, which is a short story by Brandon Sanderson, which I don't believe is technically canon to the main story, but it is part of it. Essentially, he goes to Shara and he becomes sort of a mirror to the Dragon Reborn. He fulfills a bunch of the prophecies in Shara. He collects the parts to this sangreal Sarkhanen, which is like a long rod, an hourglass shaped thing on the end. It turns into this sort of battle mace. And then he wields that in the last battle. And he's not the only one that wields it. And it comes with a little special thing as well, which probably won't happen in the show because it's another little tidbit that kind of has to be explained. And we don't have a whole lot of time for extra explanations of things. But essentially, it also amplifies your desire and curses the user. It never actually uses the words curses the user in the books. It's sort of something that people thought about after the fact. But essentially, you're willing to do anything to achieve your desires, and Sarkhanen helps you do that, but it dooms you in the process. Everyone who's used it in the book series dies. So I guess you could call it cursed. Either way, in the show, we have Sarkhanen and Kalendor instead of the Chosen Call, and we probably will not have a male version of Sarkhanen, and we probably will not have the Chosen Call at all, because these are taking the place of it. So either way, we're just getting used to the idea of what sangreal is in the opening scene here, what it can possibly do, and what it means for the series. That's why Moiraine's using it, and probably why they showcased this. Now, we go to the Waste with Rand, Lan, Moiraine, Aviendha, and Egwene. Now, this storyline in the Waste is pretty similar to what's going on in the books. So essentially, we're stopping in Cold Rock's Hold here, and we get to meet some of the Aiel, learn a little bit about their culture. Egwene does some training with the Dreamwalkers. We meet Ruark's family. And it's sort of kind of similar to the book series. In other words, we do go to Cold Rock's Hold in the book series on the way to Alcar Dal, the Golden Bowl, where Rand proclaims himself as the dragon, proclaims himself as the Kara Karn and breaks the Aiel. So that does happen. But the specifics, are a little bit different. So here we're meeting two of Ruark's wives. In the show, it's Leanne and Bear. In the book series, it's Amis and Leanne. So a little bit different here because basically they took Bear and Amis and kind of amalgamated them together into one character in the show. We're going to see that a ton. Other than that, pretty much they act as the same characters they are within the book series. These scenes specifically don't happen exactly the same way, but there's one scene in particular during this episode where Rand is sitting down having a meal with a bunch of Aiel and Moiraine and Lan, and Aviendha is lecturing them the whole time. How to do this, how to do that, eat with your right hand. It's polite to talk to people on both sides of you, unless you're instructing someone. Those are lines ripped directly from the books. So while this Cold Rock's Hold part of the show is a bit different than the book series, it is, for all intents and purposes, fairly close. Another major difference here is we're meeting Ruark's great daughter, Alcera. Now, Alcera is, in the book series, a wise one of a completely different clan and not related to Ruark at all. So we don't meet that particular character. So it's another little change in the show. I think they're setting up something else with that later on in the season, but we'll get to that probably in another video. Either way, the plotline here where Rand is in Cold Rock's Hold, it is sort of taking the place of most of the Shadow Rising, where he's with the Aiel, learning about their culture, their customs, the things that are going on. And it's slowed down and does a lot of character development and a lot of plot development that would take place over the course of most of the Shadow Rising. So these few scenes here, and probably what we're going to see next episode as well, is more in line with the entirety of the book series, and a lot of it all crammed down into one. So while they're not exactly the same, a lot of what is seen on screen is just a combination of everything you see at Cold Rock's Hold during the fourth book. We see a lot of politicking in this episode between Swan and Elida. This stuff didn't happen in the book series, at least not on page. It probably, in fact, it most likely happened off page in the book series, and it was alluded to a few different times, but we didn't get to see it. Basically, we saw Elida come back to the tower, and then it kind of sort of skipped ahead to the point where she deposed Swan and took over as Amelin herself, had her stilled, and was going to have her executed. She was put in prison either way. We didn't see any of that. Like, none of that happened on page. We only saw the part where Elida walks into Swan's study and says, yep, shields her, takes her stole from her shoulders. Then Swan has realized, holy crap, my warder's dead, which I always thought was kind of a weird thing about the book series. It was one of those things that's supposed to be incredibly impactful to Aes Sedai, but Robert Jordan, at this point, used it as a plot device that she didn't notice. She was too wrapped up in what she's doing to feel him die. either way. So we didn't see any of this stuff. So all of the interactions we see between Swan and Lyda in this season really didn't happen on page in the books, but it likely happened in some form or fashion outside of the book series, in between the lines, because it was referenced a number of different times, but we didn't really see a lot of it. Either way, it makes for really good TV seeing this, and I don't think a jump between Swan being Amyrlin and then Lyda just kind of deposing her would be a great thing for the show, because people would have a lot of questions. And as it stands, people still have a lot of questions, but it's mostly because there's not enough time in every episode to showcase everything they need to do. So they're trying to answer those questions about why and how this is happening as best they can in the season, is my guess. Now we're back on the Two Rivers, and we have some friction this episode between Maxim and Alana. None of this we actually get to see within the book series, but I'm glad they're including it in the show, because it does describe and set up some future events that we'll talk about in just a second much, much better. So we do know that Alana and Varen in the book series went to the Two Rivers, and they were there for unknown reasons, I guess is the best way to say it. They were looking for young women who could channel because of Nynaeve and Egwene. That was their story anyway, but realistically, I think they were there more for Perrin than anything else. And they don't really say that in the show too much. They mention the fact that there's a lot of people there with a lot of power. It's alluded to that Alana's after Perrin, but none of that is really discussed in great detail. But what we do get to see instead is lots of scenes between Alana and Maxim, where we're describing the mind state of Alana, which is incredibly important to a plot line I think they're going to adapt in a later season, likely next season, where she bonds Rand. Just out of nowhere, for no reason, just impulsively grabs him and bonds him, and he flips out. He super flips out. It's one of those things where bonding a man in the book series is akin to something super, super bad. You need consent to do it, and she didn't have consent to do it. So they're setting up her mind space here, because she's looking for another warder. You can tell she is. She is having a hard time with Maxim. Maxim's having a hard time with her. They're having a hard time with the death of their third. They're setting all this stuff up, which I think is an important piece, because in the book series, yes, Alana's there, she's in the Two Rivers with Perrin, but she's just off in the corner frazzled the whole time. Bouts of emotion, bouts of weeping, but it doesn't really get into her mindset. I love the fact they fleshed out her character a lot more for the screen. I like the idea that we're seeing the relationship between her and Warder. We didn't see any of that in the book series, and it works really well, especially considering the fact that one of the things she does in the book series is so integral and important to Rand's character growth and the way he views the world afterwards. And in the book series, it just kind of happens. It was a shock to me, I think to almost anyone who read it the first time. No one really saw it coming. So that's what we're getting here. Now, Aiel's coming into town here to tell them that the Natty Cawthon and the girls are being held in the White Cloak camp, where they're at, where they can find them, and that also happens in the book series. So Perrin does go on sort of a high-stakes rescue to help rescue Natty Cawthon and the girls, but it happens a little bit differently than the way we see it in the show, and we'll get into that when we get into those scenes. We have some scenes here with Egwene training with the Wise Ones how to dream walk, and I want to talk a bit about that, because things don't exactly happen this way in the book series. It's super, super sped up. So within this episode, she basically goes from not being able to dream walk to being able to dream walk to being able to shift around in Tel'aran'rhiod to being able to change her clothes and do different things and learn things. And eventually, and we'll talk about this later on in the episode, she pulls Moiraine into the dream and is able to get Moiraine and Swan together. These are things it takes Egwene a very long time in the book series to do. You're talking over the course of months and months. But for a truncated show that you have to show things quicker, they're doing a pretty good job of that. Essentially, everything she learned here in this episode and everything they tell you about the world of dreams, Tel'aran'rhiod, is correct. It's true. She can put herself to sleep eventually after the training from the Wise Ones within minutes. She can enter the world of dreams on her own. She can enter other people's dreams, which we see at the end of the episode. We'll talk about that then. She can also pull other people into the dream, if need be, from their dreams into the world of dreams and do things with them. She can find things via need, or by thinking about them, which is what we're seeing in this scene right here. She's thinking about her captor. She's thinking about the person who tortured her, Lanfear, and it brings her to Tarabon, where Lanfear is basically skulking around right now in the world of dreams. And that's pretty much why I believe they met up. I don't believe Lanfear pulled her here. I think she did it accidentally. Either way, all of these scenes where she's learning how to dream, yes, they didn't happen exactly the same way in the books, but think of it as a full book's worth of studying crammed into about 7 or 8 minutes in an episode, which is going to be about par for the course for a lot of the things from the book series to the screen. It's just going to have to be that way considering the sheer volume of material versus what we can see on screen. They can take some liberties with people are getting really good really fast at these things and time jumps in order to do it. Now we're cutting to the other big important storyline this season, and that is the Tenchiko storyline. And it's sort of kind of the same so far, but also very different. So what we get to see during this episode is scenes on the ship. So they're on a sea folk ship heading towards Tenchiko from the tower. It's a bit different in the book series. So they start out in Tyr, and they're going from Tyr to Tenchiko, but they also go on a sea folk ship. So that part is the same. Now, the people involved are a bit different. Here on this journey, we have Nynaeve, Elaine, Mat, and Min. And those are the four people that are going to Tenchiko, and they're going there for the same reason. They're going there to hunt the Black Aja and look for that object of power that is going to hurt Rand, which is likely the domination bands or the male Adam. That's what they're looking for. Same reasons as in the book series. Starting point is different. Tyr versus Tar Valon, but so far the same. Now, the players in the book are a bit different. We don't have Mat and Min. Min is back in the tower, and she is part of the tower storyline up until Elaida is Amyrlin, and then she escapes with Swan and Lyanna, as well as Logain, the false dragon. And she goes with them to the rebel Aes Sedai camp in Saladar. So that's where Min's storyline is. Mat is in Rhuidean with Rand and in the Waste for that whole storyline. They shifted things up a bit here. We don't have Tom here yet. We don't have Julian Sandar, which is another person. So in the book series, we have Nynaeve, Elaine, Julian Sandar, and Tom. We all know who Tom Merrilin is. He's the Gleeman who used to be a court bard. We've seen in season 1, and we are going to see again this season. In fact, did a preview of the next episode yesterday. It's up here on my channel now, my season 3 news, and we saw Tom in that preview. We know he's showing up next episode. We have no hints about Julian Sandar. Julian Sandar is sort of, think a cop, I guess is the best way to put it. A cop for hire, a mercenary of sorts, but not really a mercenary. Private investigator would be the best thing you could say he is. And he's there to help the girls find the Black Aja and to protect them. And that's what he thinks. We haven't seen him in the show yet, so what's likely taking place here is Mat and Min are taking their places, which they're doing beautifully, in my opinion. They have a lot of the same lines. They have a lot of the same mannerisms. Min especially has a lot of the same mannerisms as them from the book series. And it really does flesh out Mat and Min's storylines both, because Min is not super important until later on in the book series. Right now, she doesn't have much to do. She's just kind of in the background. Mat, on the other hand, is in the Waste with Rand. And while the storyline that he sees and is part of in the Waste is important, it truly is, it also takes a back seat to Rand's storyline in a lot of ways. So having him and Min here, they get the chance to shine a bit more this season, which has been a big complaint of fans for a long time. So essentially, in the book series, when they're taking the Seafolk Raker to Tenchiko, Nynaeve's sick the whole time. She hates boats. She hates the ocean. She hates horses. She hates anything but her own feet really moving. And she's having a hard time. We also get to see in this episode some Seafolk channeling. That is something that also happens within the book series, that Elaine and Nynaeve find out that the Seafolk Windfinders are in fact channelers. We saw that this episode a little bit later on, and essentially they're asked to keep it secret, which is the same thing that happens in the book series. Now, in the book series, Elaine agrees immediately, and they're happy with that because Elaine is masquerading as an Aes Sedai. We don't really truly know if Nynaeve and Elaine are masquerading as full Aes Sedai yet or not. There was always the problem that people thought of with the rings with the stones in it, but I think that's easily solved with the fact that most normal folks probably don't understand what Aes Sedai rings look like with the stones or without the stones, or what the difference means. So in the show, you have an Aes Sedai ring with no stone, that's an accepted. An Aes Sedai ring with a stone is an Aes Sedai that chose an Aja. That's the way it works. In the book series, the rings are just simple serpent eating its own tail. No stones, no nothing else like that. They get them as accepted, and they just move them to a different finger when they're full Aes Sedai. There were some questions how they were going to work that in the show, but I guess it can be answered by the fact that most normal people don't know too much about the rings, because, let's face it, there's no social media. They're not really talking to each other on the phone. So there's that. But yeah, so far, the traveling time between the tower to Tanchico and on the boat, a lot of it is pretty much identical to what we see in the book series, with the difference between there's no Tom, there's no Julian Sandar, and we do have a few scenes in the book series between Elaine and Tom, because Tom was a court bard at Cainlyn when Elaine was much, much, much younger. He was also a consort of her mother, and so she has thoughts and feelings about him and starts to remember some of them. So we haven't seen that yet in the show. We know that Tom is part of her storyline going forward in Tanchico. We're likely to see something to that effect later on if they're going to show it within the show. Now, these scenes don't happen in the books, the ones with Min and Mat, but they're pretty important for a bunch of different reasons, because they're talking about her visions here and things she's seen, and especially one she's drawn out to try to understand it a bit better. She actually seen a vision of Mat hanging in front of a twisted stone door frame from something. It looks like a spear thrust into the top of the door frame, but we're not 100% sure. That's really important, because Mat's story in the books, he's in the Waste with Rand, and he's there for a couple of different reasons. So while he was in Tyr, which we haven't seen in the show just yet, he found a dusty old red stone door frame in the basement. And he walked through it. And when he walked through it, because Mat, of course, would just walk through it, he goes into the realm of the snake people. And the snake people answer questions. And he asks 3 questions. He asks where he has to go, and they tell him Rhuidean. He asks why he has to go there, and they tell him why he has to go there. And he's not happy with these answers. So he gets mad, he rages a little bit, and they kick him out. And he leaves. He tries to go through the door frame again to get more questions answered, and he doesn't get any joy with that, because you can only go through the door frames once in your life. So he goes to Rhuidean with Rand, and while he's in Rand, he sees a second twisted stone door frame. And he's like, aha, I will get more answers. And he jumps through that one. Now, when he goes through that, he sees the fox people. Now, the fox people are different than the snake people. They don't answer questions. They give you things. They're like genies. You ask for 3 things, 3 wishes is what you get, essentially. He doesn't know that, so he starts asking questions. They don't answer. And so, in his frustration, he asks for things. He asks for a way to be rid of Aes Sedai, and they give it to him. They give him a foxhead medallion that anytime anybody channels at him, as he so puts it in the book series, it just destroys the weaves. They fade away. They can still use 1 power to pick things up and chuck it at him, but he can't be directly channeled at anymore. He asked for the holes in his memory filled, because after he got healed from the dagger in the book series, he had big gaping holes in his memory, and they did fill them with the thoughts and feelings of generals and great fighters from all throughout history. It's part of the reason why he becomes such a great general later on. A lot of it is Mat himself and his luck, but he has those thoughts as well. And the third thing is he asks to leave, which is a smart thing, because it's not just 3 wishes for free. You make a bargain with them. You give them something for something in return. And so because he didn't ask for something in return, he ended up being killed. So he was hung from the branches of Evan de Sora by a rope that was attached to an Ashendari, which is a sword spear, like the haft of a spear and the blade of a sword. And that becomes his weapon of choice going on in the series. Now, obviously, didn't go to Tyr, and he's not in Rhuidean, so he couldn't go through these door frames. But Min has had the viewing so far of the door frame, so we know what's going to happen. We may or may not see it at some point or another. We know that Tanchico has the Panarch's Palace, which is basically a museum of old things. There's a ton of old things there, which is why the Black Aja is there hunting for these bracelets in collar that could collar Rand. Guess is, that's likely where the fandom pretty much has guessed that's where he's likely to see another red twisted stone door frame if we see it this season. So this scene's really important because it sets up the viewings, it sets up Mat knowing about the viewings, and it sets up not just the fandom knowing that he is going to go through a door frame at some point or another, because we've already seen the viewing itself, but it gets them back together. It gets Mat and Min on the same page again, and they start back in their sort of buddy relationship, which I love seeing on screen. Now we have the rescue of the girls. So in this particular episode, both of Mat's sisters gets rescued from the White Cloak camp by Perrin and Fael, as well as some help from Alana and Maxim and the 2 Aiel, Bane, and Chiad. Little bit different than in the book series, but kind of the same. So we're going to talk just a bit about that right now. So while they're sneaking through the camp here, trying to find them to release them. In the book series, things happened much differently. So Varen was there. Varen made it rain after the rescue. Abel, which is Mat's father, and Tam Althor, which is Rand's father, were with Perrin to help rescue them. An Aiel named Gaul was also with Perrin, who we've not seen in the show yet at all. He's likely cut, I think, in favor of other characters, but he's sort of Perrin's bromance. He doesn't really do anything important in the book series in any way, shape, or form, other than to act as sort of a way for Perrin to bounce ideas off of and to hang out with and do things with, and a little bit of comic relief. So him not being in the show doesn't really affect the storyline, but there are a ton of people out there that really like him as a character that would like to see him in the show. Thael's with them as well. They go in, they rescue Natty Coffin, and they rescue the girls, and they get out. Now, in the show, Perrin and Thael fight a bunch of White Cloaks. They kill a bunch of White Cloaks. They see Natty Coffin dead, which she does not die in the books. She's alive and well, and her character is vastly different in the books than it was in the show. Think more of the end of this season or this episode when we've seen her praising Mat. That's how she was. She was a really good mother. Abel was a really good father. He came from a relatively well-off family because his father was a good trader. He didn't come from poverty. He didn't have abusive parents like he did in the show. Very different in that aspect. And of course, Natty doesn't die during this, so her going forward again in the show is not a huge deal being dead because she was not a part of any real important storylines going on. She was just sort of flavor text in the background because she was Mat's mother. I mean, a lot of people loved her as a character and she was important in Mat's journey. But again, having her not be in the show just winnows out one of those characters that would be unnecessary to have later on that doesn't really affect the plot. And I think that's why they did that here. Now, like we mentioned earlier, Egwene brought Moiraine into the dream so she could talk with Swan. And we know that Swan has a Tel'aran'rhiod in the tower that has the ability to enter the world of dreams, and she probably does it from time to time because she misses Moiraine, and that's where they used to meet. This doesn't happen in the book series. This is more of a way to further the plot line and do some exposition and explain some things to the viewer, more than anything else. It does a very good job at setting up the storylines, what Moiraine is going to go through, their relationship, things the dragon needs to know and hear, all of that that we do see in the books in people's heads. So this storyline where Moiraine is pulled in to speak with Swan in this hut, and they have these tender moments, doesn't happen in the book series, but I think serves the show very well. There's a lot of people out there that are like, well, you shouldn't add things to the show. You should only cut and take away and then leave the show as is. You can't really do that. You have to add things in because you can't just cut. If you cut and cut and cut, the show wouldn't make any sense. Scenes like this give a lot of flavor to the show and a lot of explanation and push the story forward, whereas if you just cut things out, it would be janky and not really fit together really well. So I think that's why they included the scene like this in here. And again, it was a great scene, really showcased Sophie Okinato and Rosamund Pike's acting abilities. Something I mentioned when I had my interview with Sophie. If you haven't seen it yet, interview playlist, make sure you go watch that. Super fun interview with her and Daniel Henney. I love her so much. She was just tickled pink that I called her mother. Anyway, nice scene here and absolutely integral to the show as far as I'm concerned. Final shots of the episode have Egwene going into some of her friends' dreams, which doesn't really happen in this way in the book series, but there's some call-outs here. So you have Egwene here with Aviendha on the ship, dressed as a Windfinder. She dresses as a Windfinder when she meets Egwene and Tel'aran'rhiod. So that's a call-out there. But more importantly, I think what these scenes are showcasing to us as viewers is the fact that Egwene can enter people's dreams. We haven't really seen that too much in the show, but it's one of those other abilities dreamers have. It's explained in great detail in the book series over and over, and it happens a number of different times in different ways, but the explanations are dry. They're kind of like people talking. When reading it is fine. Having that scene on screen like this probably would be great. Showcasing it like this, though, is a wonderful way of doing it. And again, it furthers the plot because then Egwene realizes that Rand is still kind of messing around with Lanfear, and Lanfear's a Forsaken, and that's not a great thing. And it effectively ends their relationship. Now, in the book series, their relationship kind of ended, I would say, in The Dragon Reborn. So about a book before where this season is set. This season is set in The Shadow Rising, which is the fourth book. Dragon Reborn is the third book. And some people are like, well, no, it ended in the first book. Not really. It drug on for quite some time in the books, and it was kind of unnecessary for it to drag on so long because it was really a non-entity when it came to relationships. It was a very childlike relationship, I think, more than anything else, sort of a crush more than anything. This is an effective way to end it, to see that Rand is still working with Lanfear, which in the book series, he super is during the Shadow Rising. She comes to him a number of different times, seems in the Dragon Reborn, and later on in the series. Lanfear is still always trying to get it back with Rand because she believes he's Lews Therin reincarnated, and she loves Lews Therin. So it showcases all of that. None of this really happens on page, but it's explaining some things that are important for the viewer to see to set up plots later on in the series, and things from the books that we wouldn't normally see in the show unless they progress things in a different fashion. All right, so great episode as far as I'm concerned. A lot of plot setup, a lot of character development, but we've seen that preview for episode 6, which again is in my news playlist. If you haven't seen that, go watch that. I break it down a little bit, and we get big hints what's to come. And there are some big things coming in episode 6 that you folks are going to want to see. You're not going to want to miss it. Make sure you're watching. Now, all of that being said, if you have any questions or comments or things you want to be covered, let me know in the comments down below. I've had a lot of people give me suggestions and videos to do after the season is over, a lot of lore, some questions they have about things that are going on in the books. And these are from show watchers that may not have specifically read the books, and that's a great thing. But if you're a book reader and you want something covered in depth, let me know as well. Or if you read the books a long time ago, you're enjoying the show now, and there's something you need a refresher on, let me know. We pretty much have every video blocked out that I'm going to do until after JordanCon. But when JordanCon's done, there is a great time between now and next season. If the last couple of seasons are any indication of how long we're going to have, at least 18 months or longer. Considering the fact that season 4 has not been greenlit yet, so it's not been written, and it's not started in filming, and they haven't started pre-production yet. So I think it might be longer before we hear anything about that. So we have tons of time. Any videos you folks want to see from me, let me know in the comments down below. Just put in a tag in there, video idea, so I can control F and look video idea, and it'll be there. Same as Easter eggs. If you see an Easter egg that I didn't cover, write Easter egg in the comments so I can control F and do Easter egg. It makes it easier for me to find these comments because they do get buried because there's a lot of comments in some of these videos. We're looking at hundreds of comments in some case, and I do my best to read them all, but sometimes I do miss them. Anyway, thank you very much for sticking with us here to the very end. Here's to many more.